All right, good morning, everybody. There's still a few people slipping in, but that's okay. We'll get started. Welcome, everybody, this morning to our 2022 Vol-A-Pa-Loo-Za. Wow, it's been a couple years since we've done this, right? And so how awesome is it that we're all here together? Right, yeah, for sure. So thanks for joining us. I know there's a lot of our volunteers out in the crowd. We'll thank you ahead of time for all the work that you're about to embark on for us in 2022. And you'll see lots of pictures of all the beautiful work you've done so far. So yeah, we'll get started in. We're just gonna kind of run down the table. Everybody's do a little intro on what's up for the season, and then I'll wrap it up at the end, and we'll field some questions then. So let's get started.
Well, thanks for coming out today, and we're glad we're not keeping you from working in your own gardens before we start to commandeer all of your time. Looking forward to another great year in the herb garden and the woodland garden. So this is just a nice, pretty photo from last year. Remind us of all the warm, sunny vibes that are coming our way. We do have actually one of the larger renovations going on in the woodland garden this upcoming summer that has taken place since I've been here at least. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Erin Presley, and because I know there's people here who maybe don't work out in the gardens all the time. And I have worked at Olbrich for 8 years, and I'm in charge of the herb garden, the woodland garden, and around the pond. And then I do some of the more display-oriented plantings out in front of the building. So in the woodland garden, you may remember if you look up, so you can see kind of this log wall in the upper left corner, and then behind there was where we had a really large ash tree that we cut down a few years ago. So it's gotten a lot sunnier in kind of the upper central area of the woodland garden. And then this past year, we actually also eliminated a few of the big quaking aspen that are down there, because we have some really nice swamp white oak that are starting to size up, so we're trying to make a little bit more space for the oaks. But as a result, we're gonna have an area in the center of the woodland garden that will have quite a bit more sun than it has had previously. And gardening under a high shade canopy is actually really tricky because it's a lot more difficult than you might think to judge where the shade is gonna fall at certain times of the day. So in that central area where we're gonna be having a little bit more sun, I'm going to start incorporating a few more flowering sort of savanna-esque type plants, native plants that I'm really excited about. And the other really neat thing about these plants is, like in that upper right there, that really bright red flower is royal catchfly, Silene regia. And over the past several years, we've started to do a lot more of our own seed saving. So a good number of these native plants we're starting to grow from our own, like locally harvested or seeds that have been harvested at OBG, and kind of starting to propagate our own local genotypes, which is pretty exciting. And then another kind of major thing that's going to be going on in there, I believe this year or possibly early next year, is we got some funding to improve the accessibility of some of our paths. Because there's definitely some places out there where there's a good amount of kind of uneven bricks or the land and stone paving that is pretty hard for people to traverse, and especially at night with gleam and those sort of things. So we want to make the gardens as accessible and safe for everybody as we can, obviously. So we're actually going to be renovating the paving in the woodland garden and going to a smoother style of paving. And what we're looking at right now is various forms of permeable paving. So you can see in the upper left, it goes down like kind of like a chip-like or almost like a concrete product, but then it has air spaces in it, so it just allows all the water to infiltrate right into the soil. So very excited about that. I love the old stone paving in the woodland garden, but it's definitely getting to the point where there's a lot of, and I see wheelchairs and stuff try to navigate through there, and strollers, and it is very difficult. So yeah, so that should be on the docket for this upcoming year. We're also doing one of our favorite kind of community-focused projects that we do every year, and actually the kids were here yesterday, so we're working again with the Seed to Table students from the Goodman Center. And so they have a kind of a work training in an alternative high school at Goodman, and they come out 3 times in the spring. So they do seeding of lettuce plants, which they did yesterday, and big thanks to Amanda for helping to orchestrate that. and then they come in about a month, and then we plant the lettuces out into the garden, and then they come about a month after that, and they harvest all of the lettuces, which you can imagine, it's like big garbage bags full of like huge amounts of lettuce, and they're all heirloom lettuces. We've switched to using more organic fertilizers. In the past couple years, we're getting a little bit away from the synthetic Osmocote. So the lettuce, I feel, is really, really high quality, and then they take it right back to Goodman, and I think it's eaten like within probably just like hours or like, you know, like a day or two, because they go through a lot of food over at Goodman. So that's very exciting too. A little bit of eye candy coming up for the herb garden. Since we're kind of getting back up to our normal funding levels with approaching the end of the pandemic, we're bringing back some more of our kind of like flouncy display gardens that were lowballing a little bit, especially last year. So we have the tulips back in the boxwood courtyard and a coordinated palette of other spring flowers. And then later in the summer, we'll be transitioning to this kind of like moody, romantic, peach-toned planting. And I always think it's fun when people try to explain like where their inspirations came from. And so we usually all have like one thing that we kind of glom onto early in the winter, and that forms the basis for like what you're gonna kind of craft this planting around. So in this particular planting, on the far left side, you see those really cute little cone flowers that have the petals that kind of like come out and say hi to you. So that's Echinacea tennesseeensis, which is one of our favorite cone flowers that we use a lot here. So those I had stuck in that bed. So this is the courtyard, the boxwood courtyard, the 4 square right when you come to the herb garden. I had grown those in there last year with another annual planting, and they look so good, and they're just like coming up to some really nice size now. And those also we had grown in-house from seed we collected. So I was like, well, I definitely need to incorporate those next year. So I held onto that one, and then in the upper kind of middle, you see a grass that has like a little burgundy flare out at the tips, and that's a standing ovation, little blue stem. And those were just leftovers from last year. So I decided I was gonna adopt them, and they'll be a part of my planting this year. Some of the other plants, I had gotten some seeds from Kelly Norris, who is a very prominent plants person that you folks might know. So I got some seeds from him. So we just have all these different kind of sources and inspirations that we bring into our plantings. And we spend a lot of time like crafting our ideas over the winter. I am pretty excited in the herb garden this year, this sort of patio container garden area. I have gardened with vegetables for the past couple summers. And last year during the huge Vol pandemic, which you'll hear about later, I just was getting a little overwhelmed with like all of the harvesting of the vegetables and the voles eating everything and just going crazy. So I decided for this year I need to take just a minor step back away from so many veggies. So we're going really back to the basics with herbs in this area. And we also have in the herb garden a really nice collection of very stately specimen plants that we've cultivated over time. So we have a lot of nice bay trees, little miniature olives that are kind of trained in like a bonsai style, very beautiful rosemaries. So we're gonna be using those as the background for this container planting, and then incorporate other pops of color in there. So I'm very excited about that, because it just seems very like, just kind of like romantical and moody, and like I just imagine people like putting their faces in there. It's gonna be great. And then definitely one of the highlights of last year was the Indigenous garden, which you folks may have followed. But this, in the next slide here, this young woman in the upper left corner is Rita Peters. And so Rita has worked here for several years in several different capacities. And Rita is actually Ho-Chunk. And so we have been working on growing this garden together. And it showcases a lot of plants that are just significant in like Midwestern Native American culture. So it's not specific to the Ho-Chunk people, but then we do have some very special seeds that we got from Rita's clan. So we do have some really kind of like bona fide, very neat seeds that we're holding on to, and we've been doing a lot of seed saving as well. And then we also hosted some really fun community activities. So we had a milkweed soup tasting one day. We did sweetgrass braids. the garden got really huge. Everything grew to be like 15 feet tall. It was just enormous. So people really liked to walk through there, and just, you know, the kids would come into the herb garden and be like, oh, like corn, and the corn would be so high above them. And this red corn here that you see is corn that was loaned to us from basically the equivalent of like the Ho-Chunk DNR. And so since we don't grow any other corn at Olbrich, the corn seeds that come out of here are true to seed, so we are actually properly maintaining this seed strain. So we have all our own seeds we're going to be planting this upcoming year, which is very exciting. This is just some fun photos from our activities last year. I was lucky enough to see this red-tailed hawk that was perching on our arch in the fall, and then it actually swooped down and it ate a vole, which was even better. So, and then the other really cool thing that took us a good amount of effort to get together, and I don't know if you folks know that Olbrich actually has a YouTube channel. So if you like watching anything on YouTube at all, you can go to YouTube and then you can Google like Olbrich Botanical Gardens. And it will take you to a page that's just all stuff about Olbrich. So we have lots of tutorials that the Hort staff has done on there. We have concert recordings for some of the things that events puts on, both outside and inside. Just a whole smattering of some of the education classes that are actually for younger kids too. So it's kind of a fun way to like experience some of our activities if you weren't able to physically make it to them. So if you go to our YouTube site, you can find a lot of cool information about us. So one of the things that we did last summer in the Indigenous garden is we got the Ho-Chunk translations of all of the vegetables in the garden. And so you can see the sign, and you can read the words on there. But you can actually scan this QR code that's in the bottom corner of the sign with your phone, and then it takes you to our YouTube page, and you can hear a spoken word translation of all of the words. So that's up on our YouTube channel, as well as a presentation that Rita and I did at Garden Expo over the summer about the Indigenous garden. So, very cool, very techy. And then, yeah, so we're really looking forward to like expanding those relationships and working on that garden again this year, and as it's kind of been gaining momentum. And then kind of one really exciting thing that I am looking forward to in the month of June is Tanya and Jeff encouraged me to apply for a scholarship to go to the American Public Gardens Association, the annual conference, which has like kind of a community theme this year. It's called Community of Gardens. So I applied to be actually a presenter on the Indigenous garden. It's only a 5-minute presentation, though. So, and then I actually got a scholarship to go to the conference. And our amazing, Joe's back here. Development Director Joe is also going to be making the trip. So we're going to Portland at the end of June for a full week. The conference is a full week long, and it includes trips to a lot of the big gardens that are out there, as well as just a whole host of sessions, urban farm tours, all sorts of things to learn about and share all the good things that we do at Olbrich, and bring a lot of good information back here too. So lots of good things on the horizon here, and a chance to get out of town, get away from the garden a little bit, come back with some renewed enthusiasm. So looking forward to working with you all in the upcoming weeks, and I'm going to turn it over to Sam.
Do you think we could get these lights off to see the...
Can we get the lights dimmed from the...
As long as it doesn't bother the...
Yeah, okay.
It's okay?
For the recording. Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Sam Malone. I'm a part-time horticulturist here for the past 5 years. My garden areas include Sunken Garden, Morse Terrace, Atrium Shade Garden, Donor's Arbor, Tram Circle, and everywhere in between. They get my money's worth out of me. Last time we did Vol-A-Pa-Loo-Za back in 2019, which was a couple years ago already, I was fairly new here, and I dropped on everybody that I was going to be a part of chopping down the beloved alley. I don't think I made many friends that day. And to remind you what I'm talking about, is this really cool view, which we now know is gone. I'm so sorry, but I think I made up for it over the last couple years. This is now Butterfly Lane, also called Pollinator Alley, or as Philip, who's not here, likes to call it the Weed Patch. And this year, I'm here to tell you we're making some changes again. But before you get mad at me, just let's take a little trip down memory lane for Butterfly Lane. So here's where we started. This was, a couple years ago. This archway was made up of Cornus Moss Golden Glory, which also surrounded the entire perimeter of the sunken garden. And we started cutting them down back in 2017, which was the year I started, and did it in increments. So 2019 was the final the final chop, I guess. And the reason we cut them down, there was a couple of reasons. One was the only thing that would really grow underneath them was the Scilla siberica. And as some of you may know, we are on a rampage to get rid of as much of it as possible because it's quite aggressive. The other reason, these trees were just kind of getting old. They structurally weren't that sound anymore. They were really huge, literally took over half of the garden. And when we chopped them down, they just split wide open. So it was time. I love this picture. It's so kind of moody and morbid and sad when we finally did the chop. And we replaced them with Cornus Moss pyramidalis. You can see the picture on the left was back in 2019 of spring. And you can see the picture on the right, how much they've grown. This was taken maybe a week ago. They grew, I did not shrink, let's be clear. So then we get to the COVID years, and that's the year we decided to start digging out all the Scilla. And of course, we didn't have our wonderful volunteers that spring. We had some great staff members, indoor staff members, help us out, so of course that's what I put them to work to do. But spring 2021, so a whole year later, there was still Scilla coming up. My volunteers did not get out of Scilla digging duty. In fact, I made them dig it out in a blizzard. Jumping back to June 2020, that's, again, COVID years, I'd say about 80% of the plants that I planted along Butterfly Lane were transplanted from the sunken garden. All the Verbena bonariensis and all the Cleome was actually transplanted. So I just kind of carved out little pockets and placed them along. Amanda grew a couple flats of Gara, and then all I ordered was a couple trays of Buddleia. So it kind of started out pretty small and inexpensive. Here's July 2020. You can see a couple things starting to bloom, but it kind of took its time getting going. But by the end of July, it really started to fill in and kind of got the vision of what I was going for. So last year, it did start to bloom a little bit earlier, which was great, but it still didn't start to come into its own until late June. But it sure is a pretty view. And it did go strong until our first frost in November, first hard frost in November. One of the biggest attractants, though, was this. All these pictures I took within a 15-minute time frame. So that just gives you a little sampling of all the pollinators that came to visit Butterfly Lane, aptly named. But you can kind of see, just notice there's a lot of moths, butterflies, and just a couple of bees. There's not a whole wide range of insects, which kind of gets me into part of the reason we're changing. One reason is, come on the edge of your seat. There we go. Oh, no, stop. Okay. Technically. But I want to do less of this, less watering. The Verbena bonariensis roots are maybe only this deep, while the plant is, yay tall, so it takes a lot of water. This was actually taken in 2020 when we weren't in a deep drought. And so last year I was watering this area every couple of days. It was exhausting. And we had hoses running across the paths, and this year we're gonna have the tram up and going again. So it's I just wanna do less of this. Plus the other reason is I love the view looking straight down the alley, but when you turn to the left or the right, there's a gap that maybe most people don't see, but I see. So it's you get pretty flowers up here and down here, and then there's this ugly gap where you can see all the icky foliage, and I'm not a fan. So we're making changes because I'm a gardener and that's what we do. But this is where we're heading. You can see I'm still kind of sticking to the cool color scheme that the sunken garden is known for, but I'm throwing in a little pop of yellow from the silphium. I'm going to get rid of all of, by I mean my volunteers and I, are going to get rid of a lot of the cleome. I'm just kind of done with that one, but we're going to keep a couple pockets of verbena. I like the gara on the edge. If the butterfly bush make it back, I'll leave a couple, but I'm also going to thin those out a lot. And then we're going to throw in a lot more natives and nativars. This is going to give us a longer period. Like, you know, those couple months I mentioned were like, you know, basically all of spring. There was just nothing happening. So the picture, the white fluffy flower, that's Eupatorium polished brass. That emerges like a nice deep burgundy color, so you're gonna have some color from there. The picture in the upper right is Silphium. That's gonna be nice, big, kind of structural leaves coming out. The Baptisia is gonna bloom earlier, so we're gonna just like a longer range. A lot of the stuff blooms later. All good things, guys. So this is kind of ish. I actually don't have a good picture of the side view I'm talking about because I did not like it at all, so why would I take a picture of it? But you can kind of see there are a couple like weird gaps and stuff, and then this is kind of my vision on what it's gonna be. So the Eupatorium is gonna fill in that like space, that kind of fluffy cloud-likeness that the cleome had, but then you're gonna have that Silphium kind of coming up and breaking up and having some nice structural aspects. But my favorite part is gonna be, not my favorite, I'm really excited though about the Baptisia kind of filling in that like gap that I loathe so darn much. And then it's also gonna have a lot of good winter interest. This was taken, I don't know, some winter. And pretty much the only thing I had left up was butterfly bush, which is fine, but this is gonna be so much better. The birds are going to be happier. They love to use the Vernonia and the Eupatorium, which is the like nice fluffy cloud-like stuff, as nesting material. The birds will eat the seeds of the echinacea. We're going to have just structural things like a lot of winter interest to look at. It's going to be so good. But the best part is this. You guys, this is so good. All of these insects are attracted to one or more of the plants that I have planned for this new an improved butterfly lane. So up in the upper left, all those kind of orangey colored bugs are specific to Asclepias or butterfly weed. The bumblebee in the right is going to be attracted to the Baptisia. We got host plants for the American lady and painted lady butterflies. And then we have just kind of generalist pollinator, like magnets. And then the Silphium is an attractant for parasitic wasps. So all good things. So hopefully you guys won't be too mad at me for making changes. And this kind of like segues into, Katie's going to talk a little bit more about Garden Scouts, which is the volunteer program we have here. I'm one of the leaders of it, and I'm very excited to geek out with my bug nerds again this year. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. Katie will like get into that more. So to finish off, I just want to show some pretty flower pictures on this nice cloudy, rainy day. The sunken garden, I'm going to try to like kind of go back to its roots, which is like the English cottage-style garden. More traditional little annual plantings this year. It's actually gonna be like really textural too, some nice scented geraniums, lavenders, got the fuzzy plectranthus, again, very cool, soft colors, very calming. And on the other end of the spectrum, we're gonna go on Morse Terrace, which is the terrace when you first enter the garden. It's gonna be a lot brighter, more summery kind of feeling. Last year, Aaron kind of mentioned we do themes or try to find inspiration. Last year, my inspiration was citrus. So this year, and I loved it so much, but I can't do the same thing every year just because I can't. So this year's citrus with a twist. So some grapes are thrown in there. And this planting is also going to be kind of color scheme around the tram circle too. So as I mentioned earlier, the tram is going to come back this year, and this tram circle is going to be used for the first time since it was new back in 2019, I think. There's also going to be some kind of shade structure built around the outside, so as people are sitting around admiring my plants, I mean waiting for the tram, they get to be in some shade too and not just out in the baking sun. So anyway, thank you guys so much. That's the end of it for me. Katie, you come up.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Pratt. I take care of the event garden, the tower garden, and then I'll talk to you guys about Garden Scouts, which I am also super excited for because I am turning into just like a huge bug nerd. So the Garden Scouts program you may have heard about before. Samara and I started this team in 2019. And after a few trial years, we added Sam, and now it's going to be better than ever. So we're going to hit the ground running this spring. And we started this team of volunteers because we're just always out there running around like chickens with our heads cut off, like busy with day-to-day tasks, watering, and all of our to-do lists, that we don't have time to just like sit and watch and like observe the insects that are out there. So we needed backup, and now we have maybe 10 volunteers, and we're looking for 5 or 6 to 10 more. So if you're interested in joining us, talk to Marty after the meeting, and she'll tell you all about it as well. But these folks, basically, it's a very low commitment time-wise. We just have a monthly meeting in the growing season. And then we ask that people come and scout for bugs. And the cool thing this year is we're starting to use iNaturalist, which is a free app that you can download on your phone. You can take a picture of a bug, and then it helps identify it for you, which is like amazing. So we have a variety of different tools to help us identify as well, like this digital microscope camera that we got through grant funding from Dane County Environmental Council a few years back. And this really gives us like an inside close-up view of what's happening in the bug world. Sometimes a little like disturbing, but very interesting. And as I mentioned, we have little like show and tell times and like trying to figure out what's going on. So we're all just learning together, which is like a really great environment to be a part of. And we'll also observe all different life stages of the insects. So like the black swallowtail butterfly here, that's the one that most people recognize, but we've also found multiple different instars or stages of the caterpillars, as well as like little eggs on the bronze fennel. So it's super interesting. So Sam and I are super pumped about using iNaturalist because all of our information gets like compiled into this website that shows us what's going on over the course of the summer, how many insects we're observing, how many different species, what's our most observed species, which is like black swallowtail and those cool black and yellow garden spiders. And all of this is accessible on a website, so anybody can go and look at it. And we're hoping to get all of our scouts on board with this, so we'll just keep adding and adding more observations. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the species that we've seen so far, including a butterfly, the eastern comma, that came out 9 days ago. So kind of exciting and fun things. And then this website is just loaded with information, so I highly encourage you to go check it out on your own. But if you click on our observations, then it shows you exactly where in the garden we're finding these insects. And you can really start to get a feel for like where they're hiding. Also like by species too. So you'll see like if you click on black and yellow garden spider, it'll show up in the tower garden and in the sunken garden and in the meadow garden, and it's just very cool. Another part of the Scouts project are the native bee houses that we started back in 2019. So these are, actually I think I have a little video. These are habitat for native bee species that nest in hollow stems, which is about 30% of North American native bees. And all of these hollow stems are harvested from the garden, and then the volunteers help us fill these houses. And this was the first bee house that we created. And then we built another one. And actually, we're working with Brian Powell, who's the city's master carpenter. And he is just like, I mean, master carpenter is like the best title for him because they're just so beautiful out there. So all the volunteers helped us gather all these stems, and we've been watching them for the course of the summer. And then we also just recently, during our open house, made 3 more. So there's going to be native bee houses scattered all through the gardens, and we're just providing more habitat for the solitary nesting native bees that people don't necessarily think about. The other super exciting thing that we're doing is Sam and I recently applied for, or not applied, but registered for the Sentinel Plant Network training, which is offered through the APGA. And they actually cover the costs of a hotel and our registration. And we're super excited because it's being held in Louisville, Kentucky. So we get to go on a little road trip. And they do a big training basically to tell us about emerging threats of pests and diseases that could be coming in from the shores and affecting our botanic garden here. So we'll be learning about up and coming, the spotted lanternfly and all the scary things that could be coming our way. And it's meant to use botanic gardens as the first detector network to know what's going on in that region. So just a little bit about the summer in the gardens that I work in. So in the event garden, the color of the year is Very Perry. So I know, highly anticipated. I always try to incorporate the Pantone Color Institute's color of the year just as a fun challenge for myself to stay interested and engaged in all these new annuals. I was a little upset with the blue color because we've done blue before. It was kind of like a classic blue, royal blue. And we've also done purple. So I was like, really, another blue, cool color? But it's all good. It's fine. But I decided to spice it up a little bit this year and incorporate some burgundies and pops of orange as well, just because I really wanted the color to be orange, because I think that would be fun. But I'm just gonna, it's a contrasting color, so we'll just work it in a little bit. And then next year when it's terracotta, I'll just have all these ideas. And then in the Tower Garden, former Rose Garden, we changed the name. We've removed a lot of the high maintenance, chemical dependent roses. And my inspiration for there comes from Great Dixter this year. We heard Christopher Lloyd speak during one of our virtual lecture presentations last winter. And I just loved this image of the super big tropicals and silvers and lime green. So I kind of took a lot of inspiration from that photo, bringing in big tropicals, kind of sort of a neutral color scheme, but I think that the silver and yellow plays really well together. And then also pops of yellow throughout. And we recently discovered that the popcorn plant in the middle grows really vigorously from seed, and Amanda grew it wonderfully. So I'm rolling that back. I had it in the event garden last year, and I want to dot it all over the Tower Garden this year. And it smells like popcorn. What's not to love? The other very fun thing is we recently worked with the maintenance crew to build these metal pyramids. And you can see a couple of them right now down in the Spring Flower Show in the green patio room. They're these really simplistic pyramidal shapes that kind of mimic the roof of the tower. And they are going to have an assortment of bromeliads on them. Yes. So this is kind of inspiration from Chanticleer and Tillandsia panels that we've done in the past at the gardens, but we wanted to really run with the bromeliad idea because I just love Tillandsia, and Samara loves tropicals too. So yeah, so these are the other pyramids that are going to be out in the garden. These are the more beefy rebar structured ones that the maintenance crew built for us, and they're located under the gazebo right now. And then we also might have a little cluster in the courtyard. And let's see. This is just a sneak peek of some of the Tillandsia that we're repurposing from the Spring Flower Show that'll be incorporated onto those pyramids for the summer. So with that very colorful photo, it's Avery's turn.
Hi everyone, my name is Avery Prondzinski and I work in the Meadows and Gravel Gardens here at Olbrich. So some things to look forward to for 2022 are perennial concepts in the containers around Leisure Terrace, a renovated Leisure Terrace, and the bulb installation out on Atwood. So perennials are not something new that we've tried using in containers before, but with the push of our new 2022 to 2023 annual theme, Native Plants, Natural Wonders, I wanted to really incorporate this theme into everything that I do in the garden, including my containers. So I will be trying to push an all-perennial container design. So some of the new perennials that I'm excited to use in my containers throughout the seasons will be Aquilegia and Tiarella. You can see the lead plant. There's also Monarda bebop, which is a cultivar of Monarda. There are also shrubs in here, so there's Aronia and Fothergilla Blue Shadow. So those are all really fun perennials and shrubs that I'm looking forward to incorporating in my containers this year. And as kind of like a sneak preview, you can see the first image is my spring color palette, and then the second cluster of images is my summer palette for the containers around Leisure Terrace. So the renovation of Leisure Terrace has been an ongoing challenge. I call it the marathon of planting. It took place over almost the entire course of the summer of 2021 and is kind of still trickling into 2022. So you can see this is the first picture. It's in July 15th of 2022. We're finally starting to plant into the rain garden. You can see my hardworking volunteers in the base of the rain garden here. And within 2 months, it had kind of filled in, and we actually had to put up a rabbit fence around the rain garden because everything was so lush that the rabbits couldn't help themselves but jump into the rain garden and eat everything out of there. So some interesting facts about the Leisure Terrace rain garden and the surrounding landscapes is that there's over 2,000 herbaceous plants, whether plugs or containers, that were put into this area, and over a fourth of those are carex or plugs. So we did roughly 600 plugs of just carex as the base layer for this planting. And a couple other facts. If you imagine the tune, the 12 Days of Christmas, we also planted in 12 Thuya American Pillar, 11 carex species, 10 brand new planters, 9 Fothergilla Mount Airy, 8 Quercus schutii, 7 Viburnum dentatum, 6 Asclepias paviflora, 5 Cephalanthus sugarshack, 4 Hydrangea dardum, 3 Carpinus carolinea firespire, 2 Sweet Bay magnolia, and a hawk perched on the rooftop terrace. All singing and jokes aside, I really hope that this renovated terrace serves as a haven for the wildlife that we're trying to introduce into this area and all throughout Olbrich with these native cultivars and straight native plants that we've put in here. And I hope it also serves as inspiration for visitors to sit down in this terrace and witness the wildlife that is interacting with all of these wonderful native plants that we've purposefully chosen to be put into this area. This is a quick overlook of the summer perennials. This is the summer season on Leisure Terrace. So you can kind of see all of the different beautiful colors that come from these native plants. And then the summer season in the rain garden or in the bowl that is in the middle of Leisure Terrace. And then the bulb installation on Atwood. So the marathon of planting continues out on Atwood Avenue. So if you're ever blazing pie, you will see me in my long braid. I will be out there on Atwood maintaining the prairie dropseed meadow that was installed 4 years ago. But this past fall, we installed 4,000 new bulbs out on Atwood. So this is something super exciting to look forward to this spring. Those 4,000 bulbs were planted in 2 days. So thank you to the amazing volunteers that came out to help me and a couple of staff members as well put this together and really dream up this amazing planting scheme of bulbs. And also another thanks to a couple of our sponsors that kind of helped with purchasing the bulbs. So the Madison area Master Gardeners, the Wisconsin Hardy Plant Society, and Dane County Environmental Council. We also got grants from all of these to be able to make this planting and all of the bulb plantings throughout 2021 possible. So thank you to you guys. So the bulb installation on Atwood, if you can imagine planting 4,000 bulbs, it takes a lot of hands, and it also takes 2 drills that we used to drill the pre-drilled holes for the volunteers to come back through behind us and then fill in those holes with bulbs. And it also involves a lot of math. So if you can kind of see my clipboard here, it is full of numbers. So kind of how I work backwards and how many bulbs I need and how to plant them all. Each bulb type gets its own colored flag, which you can see highlighted in orange. Then each color gets X amount of holes to kind of create a drift. So I like to plant my bulbs in drifts to make more of an impact. So each flag color gets X amount of holes, and then each hole gets X amount of bulbs per hole. So it's a lot of math once you add it all up together. So just for as an example, Iris reticulata got a blue flag. There were 500 bulbs total for this one, so I had to split it between the left side of Atwood and the right side, and then there were 4 holes per flag, 12 bulbs per flag, which means 3 to 4 bulbs in each hole, and that ended up being 31 flags of just one color, and we had 5 or 6 different colors all throughout there, so it looked really crazy for a couple of days. But this is inspiration for what Atwood will look like for this spring. This was taken at Millennium Park in Chicago, Illinois. And so with my own twist on it, this is the anticipated look for the spring bulb installation out on Atwood. So there's Iris reticulata, which will come up in early April. There are 3 different types of daffodil in here. There is muscari in here. Tulip Shogun is the cute little short tulip at the middle, and then another cultivar of tulip called ballerina, which will come up later in the season in May, and then allium to finish off this bulb installation. So those are some really exciting things to look forward to in the meadows and the gravel gardens here at Olbrich. And I will turn it over to Maria.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Fairchild, and I am pretty new to being the plant recorder here at Olbrich. I started in September, so this is a lot of new faces for me, and I'm really excited to get to know you throughout the season. So I thought I'd just introduce myself with a little map of my life. So I grew up in the northwest corner of Washington State in a town called Bellingham. I spent a lot of time in the outdoors, and that kind of instilled my love for plants and just being outside whenever possible. I think another star should appear. Okay. Then I went to college in Minnesota at Carleton College. I studied biology, and I had the opportunity to work with a professor on a prairie restoration project. So I got really excited about grassland, plant species, and the ability for carbon sequestration and those types of environments. So that kind of propelled me into this work. I spent a brief year in Asheville, North Carolina, doing an AmeriCorps year of service. And then in September, I came here to start as the plant recorder. So I wanted to just kind of tell you a little bit about plant recording, because I feel like it's probably something that a lot of you aren't familiar with. It kind of happens internally inside the cottage when I'm just working away on my computer. So this is what plant records looks like for us. We do it in a program called Brahms, and it was developed by the University of Oxford. So it's just a computer program that allows us to keep track of what plants are in the garden. Every time we get in a new plant, we accession it, which is just the process of recording information about where it came from, how many there are, and then where it's getting planted. So this program, Brahms, is used really widely across the world. This was new to me when I was developing this PowerPoint, that it's used in the UK, South Africa, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, and Kenya. So those are some of the cool international places that are using this in various botanic gardens and natural history collections. And then closer to home at the Red Butte Garden in Utah, they use Brahms, as well as the Morton Arboretum in Illinois. So if you kind of look here at the red circle, that shows every time that we get a new plant, it's assigned an accession number. So that's a unique number that follows the specific plant throughout the course of its life here at Olbrich. So when it gets planted, we know that it's given that accession number, and if it's a woody plant, we give it this metal tag that you can see on the right. So that allows us, when we plant a tree, to then 20 years later be able to look it up in Brahms and know where it came from. Another powerful thing we can do in Brahms is, just because we have all this information about all the plants that are in the garden, you can filter for various search terms and then export that to Excel, and then we can kind of analyze how many woody plant species we have, for example, and just do a bunch of data analysis that way. So that's really cool. I'm excited to get more into that as I am figuring out Brahms and just being pretty new to this position. So another exciting development in plant records is the new Glowforge machine. So you can see it kind of looks like a printer, and it's actually a laser engraver. So it's what we are using now to engrave the garden labels that you see throughout the garden, as well as signs. I'm even maybe working with Avery on making like a cool engraved wooden mailbox for plant lists. So it's a really powerful tool, super exciting to have around. And I just wanted to show this photo of the capabilities of the Glowforge. So this I did not create, but it's a map. It's like a topographic map of Lake Mendota that was created by someone living here using the Glowforge entirely. And then finally, I just wanted to say that formerly what was What's in Bloom is returning for 2022, which is super exciting. And this year it's going to be called Garden Highlights. And that's sort of in the spirit of our programming theme, Native Plants, Natural Wonders. So I'm looking forward to working with my volunteer crew to incorporate more native plants as well as non-flowers into the display to get people to notice all kinds of things that are happening in the garden, different textures, as well as the awesome summer annuals we have. So there will be a new map and sign for the lobby, so it will be looking super fresh and sparkly, and likely starting in mid-May. So I'm excited to get to know some of you better and work with you in my volunteer crew. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeff, who will fill in for a lot of people who couldn't be here today.
I've been wondering what all you guys were up to and going to be up to. So Samara wasn't able to join us today, and wanted me to mention that the internship program is back up and running at full force. So we're very pleased to have all of our interns on board for the season. They typically arrive around mid-May when they get out of school and can join us. So you'll see lots of smiling faces again, and more women, as you notice, gracing the garden. So it's all good. Samara wanted to mention she calls the Vol pandemic. It is a problem that not only us at Olbrich have been experiencing in their gardens, but all over the Midwest. And like many creatures, whether they be insects or mammals or whatever, they kind of rise, and then they peak, and then they drop again. So over the years, I think there was, I don't know, several, I've been around a long time, 25 plus years, so I think we've only seen this maybe once in the past. So what are we doing about it? We live with them. And like Aaron said, we have hawks, we have owls, we have mink. So there's things out there that are doing the job for us. They can't solve the problem immediately. They have to build their populations a little bit too. So I think things will settle down this season, at least I hope so. But this was a shot last year where these ensets, or Abyssinian bananas, which were taller than me by a few feet, were literally taken down by the voles, eating around the crowns of the plants. So. And we're no doubt, as the snow melts, we'll see more damage from these little guys. This was a north wind panicum, or switchgrass, that was this spring? Yeah, found it sort of laying on the ground this spring out near the rose garden. So they're still around, but we're saying everything we're doing these days is more environmentally friendly. Every year we try to learn more about what we're doing. We heard all the wonderful things that we're working with insects and such. And so when we have a problem like this, in days of old, we would have put out baits, to take care of that sort of thing. We're not doing that anymore. We don't want to risk, poisoning other creatures and even using those types of chemicals anymore. That's kind of the path we've been on for a while, and we're going to continue that. But one of the very surprising things, just to show you how bad the voles were this season, is these crab apples, which were planted in 2005. So they got to be at least 20 years old because they went in with some age on them. Trunks on them about this big. Voles actually girdled all the way around the trunks of these, all three of those trees in the rose garden. So what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to save them by doing what's called bridge grafting, where you take small twigs and you attach them above the wound and below. So we'll have to excavate some of the soil out to make that attachment. And it has proven successful in past cases. We've never done it here at Olbrich, but we're going to give it a try and see if we can make it work. If not, if it doesn't work so well, we'll be planting something else in that place next year. Somebody I wanted to mention a little bit about the Learning Center is now getting all of those things that we hoped we'd have over a year ago, mainly the furniture and planters and such. So if you look out the windows here, you see the beautiful furniture that is gracing the Lusher Terrace, but we also have nice, comfy furniture up top on the rooftop garden. So you'll be able to sit up there and enjoy the beautiful view and overlook. And all the planters are finally in as of a couple weeks ago. So Samara will do her magic up there, and apparently she's going to use a lot of succulents up in that location, as she's done in the rose garden in years past. And of course, Samara had to put in her volunteers, right? Because they're doing a lot of that work, the busy bees. And then I'll just finish up myself. So, it is exciting that we finally have all of the gardens around the Learning Center planted up, and they will develop beautifully this year. Like Avery said, we really didn't get everything planted until late summer of last year, so it needs some time to root in. But I remember when we started this project, and we're out there cutting down all the crab apples and digging out perennials and some of the sour looks we got from people. And how could you possibly do that? And things evolve and gardens change, and now we have this beautiful learning center that we're able to use and teach people about environmentally friendly gardening and all the wonderful things we're doing here. So it was well worth it, and it allowed us to then revamp the plantings and use way more natives. There's at least 70% natives in that zone alone. So it's really fun. It'll be fun to see the garden develop over the season. I also wanted, Dan isn't here, and of course he's our Thai gardener, and he wanted me to speak about the Thai Pavilion a little bit. So Tanya, Joe, and I have been working with the UW and Amy Scanlon of the City Engineering Department on finally getting some roof repairs done on the Salah. So we're working with a consultant called Insight, and I just took a little blurb off their website there on the right. They are a engineering consulting firm who specializes in historic structure renovations. So we think we're in really, really good hands with this company. And we're even looking, we've been making contact back to our friends in Thailand, Ponsak Payavichian and Kokiart, who was the architect of the pavilion itself, and Kim Santiago, who was with us way back then, is making some of these connections right now. I got an email from her at 2:45 last night, 2:43 a.m., because that's when she has to set up her phone calls with people in Thailand. So we're working behind the scenes, and we're hoping within the next year or two, there's a lot of details to work out. All the tiles that, and actually we thought we would just be kind of fixing some of the caps and stuff on the pavilion. Well, it turns out under further investigation that all of the tiles on the roof are deteriorating. They're starting to delaminate, so we have to literally replace every tile with brand new tiles. So they're having those made in the US, but we want to make sure they're made to a very high specification so that they last as long as possible. So they've been in since, 2000 or so. So they've over 20 years old. We thought they might last longer, but that's the way things go. We're very fortunate that the University of Wisconsin, set up an endowment to pay for repairs of the pavilion over time. So this is not coming out of our pocket. The UW has planned ahead to make all the necessary repairs on the pavilion over time. So that's all great news. And so when that happens, we'll probably have to have limited access in and around the Salah, of course, but all well worth it to get that done. One of the things I wanted to mention is that the American Horticultural Society recognized Olbrich for a distinguished award. I'll move on to the next one. So the Garden Stewardship Award, which is given to one garden in North America. There's over 500 member gardens of APGA, and we were selected to win this award. And the award is given to public gardens that embrace and exemplify sustainable horticultural practices in design, maintenance, and/or programs. So this is an award that goes, thank you. It's very, very cool, very cool. And it's, it's for everything we do here. Of course, the gardens are part of that. But everything we do here is in that vein. So we're very, feel very fortunate to have received that award. One of the things that Aaron Presley, being Aaron Presley, very humble, did not mention is that she did get a scholarship to attend the annual meeting at APGA, and she's going to give a presentation on the indigenous garden, but she also received a very high award herself, and I'm just going to read from the letter that they sent, and they said, moreover, the scholarship committee voted unanimously to award you, Aaron Presley, the inaugural Gerald Donnelly Future Leaders Scholarship conferred upon one exceptional candidate who is a rising leader in public garden industry. So it's a very high award for Gerald Donnelly. This is the first year that they presented this award. It's brand new. Gerald Donnelly has been the director at the Morton Arboretum for many, many years and is a big part of APGA's, the American Public Gardens Association. So it's a big deal, and we're very proud of her to receive that. Another kind of cool thing that came up in that whole vein is a few weeks back, we were, for our gravel gardens work here at Olbrich, we were in the New York Times. Margaret Roach, the garden writer for the New York Times, who used to be Martha Stewart's main gardening consultant. So she's a big deal. So she wrote that up for us, and so that was kind of cool. So it's fun to see that all of our hard work, and I mean everybody who works with us, volunteers and staff, and all of our support from members is getting recognized around the country. This year, as many of us already mentioned, our Native Plants, Natural Wonders programming theme that we're going to run this season and next, and we're going to, kind of spread the word about environmental horticulture and doing better for the environment. So, our leader, our leading light is Doug Talmy in that regard, and I'm hoping that all of you too can carry that on, because it's something that we all need to get involved with in our own home gardens. And so that's what we are going to be trying to teach all of the people that come to Olbrich, more about through classes, through workshops, through walks through the garden, all those things. And so, keep an eye out for that. Join us, and hope you can also do your part. I put that leave the leaves in there for a reason, because at this time of the year I see all sorts of leaf piles gathered up on the curb already in my neighborhood, and really we should be keeping those in our own gardens. Use it as mulch. It's great stuff. And why would we keep it other than that it's helping us out as gardeners, is because this is the kind of creatures, which is the logo. The Cecropia moth caterpillar is part of our logo for the Native Plants Natural Wonders, and they need those leaves to survive. If you throw them out on the curb and they get thrown in the back of a truck and smushed in a big compactor, that's the end of them. And that goes with a lot of other insects. So keep those leaves in your garden. Keep them on your beds. You don't have to take them all off and then throw a bunch of wood mulch that you have to pay money for to bring back. You can just keep the gold that you have in your garden. But anyway, I want to say again, thanks to all of you folks for helping us out, and I hope you're happy with the little sneak preview of what's going to happen here this coming season, and I'm looking forward to it. I know it's rainy now, which we so need, so I'm not crying about that at all, but before long, we'll have lots of beautiful wildflowers popping up in the woodland garden and all over the rest of the garden too. So hope to see your faces in the coming weeks, months of the gardening season. I guess we can open up the questions if anybody has any. Jim?
Permeable walkway you're talking about in the woodland garden, is that the same stuff they're using at the Crane Foundation?
The question is the new pathways in the wildflower garden. What's that all about? What are we using? It's a company called Permalock. And I think that it is the same product they use at the International Crane Foundation. Chanticleer Garden that Aaron spent time with a few years back, and I visited many times, uses it in their wildflower gardens and other pathways. It's around. They use, I think they're using like recycled tires and things like that, rubber, to create the product itself. It's almost like a gravel consistency, and then they mix it and heat it, and then they spread it out almost like you would asphalt. But it keeps the air pores within it, and so it's better that way. It also, for us being Olbrich and being former marsh, our soils are very movable. In the winter, when the ground freezes, they heave everything in sight, and that's why so many of our pathways here don't last for a very long time. But this product can very easily move with the frost and such. So that's what we're looking at. We're still exploring other opportunities, and we have until the end of next season to actually get this done. But I'd like to get it done sooner, if possible. That's a good question.
What is the organic fertilizer that you're transitioning to in place of the asphalt?
What's the answer to that? Yeah, better repeat the question to her.
Are we on? Oh, there we go. Yes, so typically we have frequently used Osmocote to fertilize our containers. We don't really fertilize any in-ground plantings except for some of the tropicals. So we've been transitioning to one of the products. It's called Sustain, Sustane, and it's based on composted turkey manure. And so they have actually a certified organic formulation, which is more of an immediate release. And then their other formulations are slow release, so they do have a polymer which prevents them from being certified organic, but they are all organically based off of turkey manure.
Anybody else? Turn it on.
I understand all the information you need when you do an accession, but de-accession, does it allow you to enter data like a wood with a vole attack or
Oh, yeah.
for future reference?
Yeah, let's see.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question was about de-accessioning in Brahms, and can you hear me okay? Yeah, so de-accessioning in our program called Brahms, and if we can put, like, if there was a vole attack and that's why the plant died. And yes, you can do that. So deaccessioning, it's actually kind of cool because deaccessioning isn't just deleting the plant off our records, it's marking it as dead, so then we can still go back and look up the plant, and you can also put a reason for the deaccession. So I don't always have a reason, but when I have information from the horticulturist to put a reason, then we can do that.
Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap it up. We have lots of weeds that we want you to pull next, so we can go right out these doors. Thanks for coming.